Hey everyone, this is Mike with another vlog. This week, or this in this video, I'm going to be talking about Nintendo and the future of Nintendo. A lot of people believe that Nintendo are in some serious trouble right now. The Wii U isn't selling as well as they would hope, but Nintendo is still doing very well in the handheld market. So it was announced, I think, yesterday in an article that Nintendo will be starting to manufacture, or at least like starting to produce, the Nintendo NX systems this fall. And one thing that I don't think Nintendo is in trouble, but one thing that I kind of don't like is that they're rushing so quickly to produce another console. Just a few years after the Wii U was released. The Wii U came out in 2012, and at this point, it really hasn't been marketed very well. Because I know a lot of people and have read, various articles and seen various tweets of people thinking that the Wii U was just something that was for the Wii, like the previous console, and it wasn't. They didn't know it was a new console. So Nintendo needs to, um, get on that and make sure people know that the Wii U is in fact a new system. So whenever this comes up, people want Nintendo to start developing, just stop making consoles and develop for third party, develop for Xbox and PlayStation and maybe PC and other platforms. Nintendo can do that, but I still think Nintendo at least will always have probably a foothold in the handheld market. They're very dominant in that market, so I don't see them abandoning that market at all. I think they'll continue making whatever the next system is after the 3DS. They'll still continue to do that, and people will still continue to buy those games because those games are very different from what you see on consoles. It's why Nintendo's done so well with handhelds. Going back all the way to the Game Boy, the very first game that came out with it was Tetris, which is a great pick up and play game. It's a puzzle game. It works perfectly well for a handheld. I think when Sony released the PSP, one of the issues people had was they didn't really have time for console experiences on the go. Even though that's what Sony tried to market with the PSP and the Vita. Like you saw a lot of games get kind of ported over to those systems, or series of games get versions on those systems, and some people just didn't have the time to play those. And that's why Lumines is still, I think, the best game on the PSP because it feels like a portable game that I can pick up, play while I'm on the bus, and turn it off and not have to worry about getting invested in a story or anything like that, like I would on a console game. So I think Nintendo makes great handhelds and great handheld games. But I'm going to compare Nintendo to Sega for just a little bit. So the last time I remember a console coming out very quickly after the initial console, well, I guess the 360 came out. That was 4 years after it released because that was 2001, and we got the 360 in 2005, and it came out fairly quickly. And Nintendo, I believe, is they're going to start manufacturing NX stuff this fall and maybe have it come out next year. There's not a whole lot of details about what the NX is and what kind of system it'll be, but I'm going to compare this to Sega for just a second. So in 1999, Sega released the Dreamcast, and this came off of the heels of them discontinuing the Sega Saturn, at least in the United States, in 1998. Saturn came out in 95, and by 1998 they had stopped. They discontinued the system, at least in the American market, maybe even all North America. I'm not really sure. They released the Dreamcast in 1999, and the Dreamcast, I think it's actually probably my favorite Sega system. Um, Still have mine sitting right over here. It's a great system, great games. I think people that had Dreamcasts at launch were probably a lot happier than people who had PS2s at launch. I think the launch lineup and experience on the Dreamcast was, just a better experience than the PlayStation 2. But in 2001, Sega stopped making hardware and just went third party. So the Saturn got discontinued, and I think some of the reason the Saturn didn't really catch on was I feel customers felt burned by Sega for some of the Genesis add-ons that didn't really catch on, such as the Sega CD and the Sega 32X, and then they were kind of done by the time the Saturn was released. the Saturn released against the PlayStation, the original PlayStation. The PlayStation was less expensive, and then the Dream, or not the Dreamcast, but the Saturn, was discontinued in '98. And the PlayStation, the original PlayStation, continued to sell very well. Well past when the PlayStation 2 launched. They did the redesigned PlayStation 1. That was, I think they just called it the PS1. But in 2001, Sega got rid of the Dreamcast, and I think it was just like a loss of consumer confidence based on Sega CD and 32X, and also the Saturn. So even though the Dreamcast is an amazing system, not enough people bought it because they felt burned by some of the stuff that happened in the past with Sega. So, and also another thing that kind of hurt the Dreamcast was at the time, Dreamcast came out a year before the PlayStation 2, so a lot of people waited for the PlayStation 2, and the PlayStation 2 had a built-in DVD player. I think there might be a way to get DVDs to work on the Dreamcast. I think it's through doing some various mods. But anyway, PlayStation 2 had a built-in DVD player. The Dreamcast didn't, or at least didn't from the factory. I think like I said, there's ways to get DVDs to work on there, or video CDs or something. Anyway, this is at a time when DVD players were still fairly expensive. I remember buying a DVD player in 2000. It was still around $250. So when you bought the PlayStation 2, you got the game system, you got a DVD player for I forget what the price was. I think in 2001 when I bought my PS2, I think it was $299 still. So that hurt the Dreamcast as well. Like I mentioned, Nintendo is still very dominant in the handheld market, and they're also getting into mobile. So I think the mobile will definitely help Nintendo out. Well, and it'll be Nintendo games on mobile platforms. I believe they're porting over a Pokemon game. I think it's like Pokemon. It's like, I believe it's a puzzle game. I'm not exactly sure. But also at this time, the fact that mobile really wasn't much of a thing yet kind of hurt Sega as well. Sega couldn't get into mobile because mobile in 2001 was vastly different than it is now. You had some games like they were included on the phone, like Snake, and you had various other games that you can buy, but they weren't really the kind of mobile games that we play today. They were very basic and not really good. So I think Nintendo is in a far better position than Sega was when Sega started to transition out of hardware and mostly into software. Like I said, they're starting with mobile. They have a strong handheld market, and also their Amiibo line is selling very well as well. So that's helping them out. I don't think the Wii U has been marketed well. Like I mentioned, many people didn't know it was a new console and thought it was just like an attachment for the Wii or something like that. What I think Nintendo should do with the NX, I think it should be a more traditional system. I believe I've read that the NX will also support Wii U hardware. So if you have a Wii U controller, like a Wii U tablet controller, you can use that with the NX, from what I've read. But and that's if people want to use them, of course. But I think they should focus on making it a more traditional system, something along the lines like a PS4 or Xbox One, where it has like a more traditional controller. And if players want to use a Wii U controller, they should be able to do that as well, depending on what the game is. But Nintendo, if they really want to get back on track, they're going to have to get better third-party support. They haven't had great third-party support for a while. I think the Super Nintendo was the last console they had that had just massive third-party support. It was the console that had the most third-party games for a Nintendo console. And, they've had less and less third-party games with each system because the N64 came out, and a lot of companies didn't want to develop on cartridges anymore because of like the increased cost of making cartridges, and the amount of storage space on cartridges is less than a CD-ROM. So there are some games which kind of surprised me, with like Resident Evil on the Nintendo 64 somehow managed to fit everything from that game onto a cartridge, and I believe that was could have been I think it was a 2-disc game on the PlayStation 1. Maybe it was only one. I remember it being 2, but so there was some cartridges that actually like everything was able to fit, but they cost more to make and they don't hold as much generally. So then the Wii came out. The Wii was a very successful system, but I believe it was mostly successful based off of the fact that it was a new way of play, and people bought it, played with it for a while, and then lost interest quickly after that. I have one sitting in storage somewhere that I haven't really played in over a year. So I believe that with that, each system has had less third-party support, going like starting with a really hard decline in the Wii days, and the Wii U especially has less third-party support than the other systems, and Super Nintendo had the most. But I also think the hardware should be, like I said, be more in line with the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4 as far as like how powerful it is, because that'll allow big third-party games that require more hardware to run to be played on this NX console. So like Assassin's Creed, Call of Duty. Even though they've done some Call of Duties on the Wii, I don't know if they've done any on the Wii U. They just haven't done well, just because those systems are underpowered compared to the systems those games were originally designed to run on. But I think that if they make the hardware similar to what's in the Xbox One or PlayStation 4, they'll be able to bring more third-party developers on board. And also, Nintendo has some of the best third part or first party games like ever. So they'll still be able to create, your Mario's and Zeldas and games like that. Star Fox and all the games from their past library. They can, create versions of it on the NX. But I just don't know if the third parties will want to get on board with a new Nintendo system just a few years after the Wii U came out. Like I said, I think Nintendo's in a much better position than Sega, since they have such a dominant handheld market and also are getting into mobile. They have the amiibos, and they still have the diehard fans that still that will buy the Nintendo systems regardless to play their Mario or Zelda and Smash Brothers and stuff like that. So I definitely think that they should work on building up a more powerful system that can still deliver the first party experiences that we come to expect from Nintendo, but also be able to run some of the bigger third party games like your Assassin's Creeds, your Call of Duties, any of the other games that come out like annually. Like I don't know if there's a Madden been done on the Wii or the Wii U. Maybe there has been, but I'm not exactly sure. But it should be a more traditional system. So if a player wants to play Madden on the NX with a Wii U controller, they can, but they can also use like a more traditional style controller, such as something that Nintendo would design that would be in line with what Microsoft and Sony have on their systems. So I don't really think Nintendo is in a whole lot of trouble. They definitely have areas where they can improve, but also they definitely need to get more third party support, especially from some of the bigger publishers like Ubisoft, EA, companies like that, and bring some of those big budget AAA games back to Nintendo, where people can play them any way they want. If they want to use a Wii U controller, they can. If they want to use a regular controller, that should work as well. And then they got a mobile strategy in place, so I think Nintendo is doing fine. But I think if the NX doesn't catch on, they'll be in a lot more trouble than they are now. But like I said, they're doing fine. That's going to do it for this video. I want to thank you all for watching. If you liked the video, rate, comment, and subscribe. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. And I want to thank you all for watching, and take care.